Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. I am Tony Lynch. I am the host of this podcast, and we are your number one podcast for bringing you conversations around death, dying, and grief, trauma, and mental health. And before I bring on my next guest, I would like to say that if this is your first time tuning in and you're tuning in anywhere other than the YouTube channel, do me a favor. Head on over to that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And if you know anyone who can benefit from the conversations that we have, do me a favor, share this with them and let them know that there are support resources and people who will walk with them in their darkest moments. Now, before I bring on my next guest, I would like to say that this is for educational purposes only. So get your questions and comments ready. And I'm going to bring on my next guest. Guys, help me welcome my next guest, the amazing Chris Wasko. Sorry.
Awesome.
Wasko. I got it that time. Yeah, how you doing today?
I am great. Thank you. How are you, Tony?
I am amazing. Looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too. Thank you.
Now, before we get started, tell people who you are, where you're from, and about the work that you do.
So, as you said, my name is Chris Wasko. I currently reside in San Diego, California, and I now work as a spiritual counselor, energy healer, and psychic medium. Although that was a huge leap from what I used to do because my background is in business. So, as you can imagine, it was very surprising to me, probably more than anyone, that I do this kind of work now. And I help people recognize their trauma, their wounds in their own energy body, and I help them work to heal that.
I love that. Thank you for the work that you do. Amazing. Now, walk us through your journey. Walk us through your journey of becoming being in business and then transitioning to the work that you do now.
Yeah, so I was raised by very financially minded people. My parents were both in finance. They met on Wall Street. So that was really the foundation of my upbringing as far as, monetary means, financial means, and what I thought I should be doing with my life. So, I majored in business and I went into the business world and I did very well and it worked to a degree. And then things started to change for me when I became a mother. And I decided I was going to take a break and focus on my kids. And at this time in my life, I was noticing a lot of the very toxic patterns that were in my childhood now starting to affect my own children. And I started to recognize that both of my parents are narcissists on different sides of the spectrum and incredibly abusive. But these were all things I had normalized because it's all I knew. It was my entire childhood.
Yeah.
And there were elements that now started to affect my children. For one, my father is extremely volatile and he was physically abusive to me growing up. And when he hit one of my children, I was, of course, extremely upset to now see this affecting my children. I did make the choice then to forgive and to try and move on, and she'll still try to have a relationship with them. And then another 8 years went by and he threatened to hit my husband. And that was my enough. I'm not doing this anymore. And at that time, I was just terrified. I made the decision not to speak to them anymore, to just cut them off, block them. But when you have parents that punish you so much, even as an adult, in my case, I had so much fear. They always punished me growing up. So my first thing was, what are they going to do to me? How are they going to try and hurt me? So I was terrified. I started becoming anxious for the first time in my life. So my first thing to do was to enter therapy. I started to just really unpack narcissism, narcissistic abuse, what that is, what it looked like, to really validate some of the experiences I had, to make sure I wasn't feeling crazy. Because when you've been gaslighted your entire life, it can feel extremely insane on so many levels. But what was starting to happen is, as my body was healing and as I was healing my own nervous system, it started opening me up to spirit. I would be having a conversation with somebody and I would just see someone behind them in my mind's eye. And it really threw me. I was shocked to say the least. And of course, I did what I think many people do. I ignored it because, I didn't think for one anyone would believe it. And I barely did at the time. But anyone who starts to open to spirit knows that they don't leave you alone. And it just kept happening. And I decided, okay, maybe I need to do something about this. So I started to take classes to understand how spirit communicates because they don't communicate like we do. It's all energy. And
Right. Yeah.
it helped me understand a lot of my gifts that were so buried under all my trauma. Because the more I healed my trauma, the more I opened up, the more I connected to these aspects that, the ability to read the energy of others, the ability to climb into people's energy and to see where their trauma is. So it really made me understand all the things I went through
Mm.
has allowed me to help others.
Wow. That is amazing. Now, we talked before about this, right? About energy and all of those beautiful things. And you said a lot there. And I want to touch on something real quick. Um, and just ask a basic question. Do you ever feel that some of the narcissism that you had been around, did it ever rub off on you at any point throughout your life? Did you
Yes.
ever find yourself exhibiting some of those habits?
Yes, I didn't see it as much until I became a mother. And I think that's when a lot of us see it. When you're raised in a narcissistic environment, you are going to have some tendencies. It's usually referred to as fleas. And
Mm,
it will just be a matter of how it affects you and how much you use it. There is someone that will turn into a full fledged narcissist, and there is some other people that will have the tendencies. I'd like to
mm,
believe that I just had the tendencies and wasn't a full fledged narcissist, but I think just the fact that I was able to be self-reflective shows that I was willing to heal that. And many narcissists cannot do that because they are so deeply wounded. They have really embodied this false self. And for me, when I saw it rubbing off on me as a mother, was the kind of the first steps for me of like, this is not okay. I don't want to be this parent. But when it's all you have to learn. You have to teach yourself. You have to find other people to help you, to guide you, and to be open to listening and to learning and to not look at yourself like you are the perfect parent. You are the perfect parent for your child, I believe, in many cases. That is the case. But I believe when you're seeing toxic tendencies in yourself and it's starting to affect the next generation is a wonderful opportunity for change and for growth and for
right.
expansion. So yes, for me it was absolutely there. And narcissism is a generational pattern. It carries on until someone decides enough that I'm going to be the cycle breaker. This ends with me. And that is absolutely what I've chosen to do and what I will continue to do.
Wow. That is amazing because listening to you, it made me reflect on one of the narcissistic relationships I was in with my son's mom, right? Now, I was never familiar with the narcissist. I didn't even know what a narcissist was until after she was done with me. I was like, hold on, how in the world did I get in this situation, right? But then, after she was done with me and I had to heal from the things that she had done, I had to reflect back on my life as well.
Yeah.
And I reflected on a lot of relationships that I had been in. The ones that I pretty much destroyed, you know. And I thought to myself, like, is it because am I this way? Do I have these tendencies and things like that? I've always thought of myself a very easygoing guy, but I was very self-destructive as well, you know. Um, it wasn't like I didn't listen to people or anything like that. It's just some of the things that I did, right? And never taking accountability for my own actions.
Yeah.
And there was a lot that I had to go back in and go, man, I don't want to be this way. I don't want to be this person, right? Because I'm leaving a path of destruction for those individuals that are trying to get attached to me. and I became just a loner, right? Because I didn't want to keep doing that. So a lot of discipline, a lot of like you said, self-reflection, a lot of regaining respect for myself and for the people that I was around. So I had to teach myself how to listen without wanting to respond. Understanding that everybody has their own point of views, and not to impose my own views on someone else. So it was a lot of just breathing and destroying those toxic traits that I was carrying.
Yeah.
And so now what poses my next question in the healing process of understanding all of those, uncovering all those traumas. Can you walk us through that?
Well, I feel that a really good thing to start is to recognize your trauma response. When you understand
Mm,
trauma responses, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, you understand more about yourself, right? You
mm,
understand how your body has been trained and conditioned to respond because that is usually rooted in childhood development. A child's need in their first, 6, 7 years of life is to survive. So they adapt to whatever that household is, whatever that environment is. You know, it doesn't matter really. So if you have a volatile parent, like I did, you're going to try to please them. You're going to try to keep them happy so you don't get hurt. That type of child doesn't look at the parent like the parent is a problem. That type of child looks at themselves like they're the problem and they have to do
right.
better and they have to fix themselves in order to make the situation better. So when you are raised with that, and then you understand trauma responses, you understand how your nervous system has been hardwired to respond in life. So that will look different for every individual, whether you've had a toxic environment or not. There are people that have really great childhoods, and I just actually had a conversation with someone yesterday that they spoke to an individual that had this wonderful childhood, but she was kind of angry with her mother for not better preparing her for the toughness of this world. So it's
Mm,
interesting how it's all about perception, right? And
right.
for us in our relationships, if we're not liking our relationships and how things are going and processing, it's looking at your trauma responses. How are you responding when you're feeling threatened? And that's usually in an argument or, in situations where you're, just disagreeing and not aligning, right? Uh,
Mm,
you recognize healing when you're able to have mature conversations, when it's not about trying to fight somebody to win. It is about trying to understand, to comprehend, to be respectful, and to learn and grow together, and those are the kinds of things that you start to recognize in yourself and, recognizing the patterns, right?
mm,
So when you recognize your patterns, again, that will tie to the hardwiring of your nervous system. So in order to change those things, you have to change that hardwiring. And that takes some work, right? It didn't happen overnight. It's not going to heal overnight. So there's a lot of things that people can do. And I love the fact that so many modalities now are out there to help people really get to the root of a problem, especially before it starts manifesting in the body into illness.
mm.
So, there's a lot of things we can do. It's just a matter of each individual, what works for them, how their energy will adjust and adapt based on the practices they're utilizing.
I love that. I love that. As you were saying that, I started thinking about this quote, and I just saw that I was watching a video, and I want to get your thoughts on this. And because you mentioned trauma responses and things, and so I started thinking, after listening to that, I was like, wow, that really felt that it hit pretty deep. And the guy was saying, when you're dealing with trauma responses, well, no. Let me correct. He goes, when a person becomes a loner, little do they know that it's a trauma response. You get so used to people mistreating you that you feel safer alone. And so I started unpacking that, and I was going, wow, as many times as I've been able to just push people away, for no particular reason, because I didn't want people to get close to me. And this is why it related to me so much, because I was used to people trying to hurt me or mistreat me, even if their intentions were good. I couldn't tell the difference between the good ones and the bad ones because they
Yeah.
all looked alike after a while, right? And so, and being the man that the young boy that I was, um, it was just easier, and easier for me to keep myself safe, right? And so, when I talk about being homeless and things like that, people are like, how did you become homeless so many times? Because I was consistently every 6 months or so, depending on where I was at, if someone tried to get close to me, and sometimes it wouldn't take 6 months, sometimes it'd be 3 4 months, I would pack up and leave, and it made it easier for me to do that. Again, thinking about the narcissists and the things like that, and how I kept running into them. And then I started thinking, like, I keep attracting these individuals. I must be the narcissist, right? But it's like you said, it's a normality. It's
Yeah.
something that we just become accustomed to. You know, I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think you bring up so many good things in this, and it really equates to the fact, trauma equates to not feeling safe.
Mm,
So, where someone is traumatized, it is going to equate to a time in their life they weren't safe. So, if that is repetitive, and that's where, CPTSD has been a very common diagnosis of people that have had childhood trauma, childhood abuse, because it's repetitive, it's over time, it is complex because that's how, again, the nervous system becomes hardwired. So yeah, being alone ultimately can make you feel safe. So that's what the body ultimately works to do. Just even beyond the formative years of growth and development, we still want to feel safe. We want to feel loved. As human beings, we want connection. But when that connection can feel threatening, it's like, no, no, I'm good by myself. I'm safe by myself.
mhm,
And it is all also connected to recovery, right? When you have been in any environment that's toxic, any relationship that's toxic, your own space is going to feel so much better. And a lot of times we really just need that time to decompress, to reset. And I even think some of us are built to need that even in relationships. Like there's some of us that will just need that time to go within and to have some time alone, having very little to do with the relationship, but more of just that need to recharge, if you will, and get back to, where you want to be energetically. Like I'm a big believer in that because I love that kind of time.
yeah. It's that recharge, right? It's
Yeah.
definitely that recharge, because with the work that we do, a lot of people don't know how much people really drain us, right?
Hmm.
And having to be a part of that, expelling our own energy, saying, hey, take what I have, it's yours, right? And we do it so freely, so
Yeah.
openly. And so then we get those energy takers, right? And they're like, oh, you're going to give it to me? Oh, yeah, I'll take all of that. And then they end up taking pieces of you that don't belong to them.
Exactly.
And so it leaves us in a place where we're just like, oh my God, I have to disconnect. I have to be able to recharge, just to get myself back together. And that people don't understand, like that can take a little bit.
Yeah.
And and,
Yeah.
and so what I often find is that, for myself, and again, I'm speaking for my own self in this area, I find that people will call me just to dump their crap on me without asking me permission or anything. And I have to stop them like, hey, whoa, right now, I don't have the energy or the mindset to be able to do this. I'm in recharge mode. And
Yeah.
sometimes it can start off as a friendly conversation. Hey, Tony, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing good. Oh, yeah, by the way, I'm like, oh, you just tricked me. No, you didn't. You
Mm.
you, you really just tricked me, right? So I become very protective. Talking about that alone time, I've gotten so used to it that it's very peaceful for me.
Mhm.
And I now, even with inside of there, it's like I have to be careful, because what I would do, I would withdraw from the world, right?
Yeah.
And I'll do it for long periods of time. And so, yeah, it's just one of those things when it comes down to dealing with the state of the world, and being so intimate in the work that we do. You know, um, do you ever feel that way?
Yeah, and I love how you're talking about it too, because when you think about it, when we look at the seasons, right?
Hmm.
Not every season is spring and summer about growth and renewal and, exerting ourselves, right? There we have fall and winter as well, where it's about, going within, hibernation, all that. As human beings, we are meant to have these type of seasons as well because we're so hardwired in this society to be go 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 and to achieve and to strive and to keep pushing, right, keep on keeping on. Right, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think we as a society allow ourselves these times of rest and regeneration, but when we do that for ourselves in that natural sense that we have connected to nature, if you will, it doesn't necessarily have to align to the seasons, but you are allowing yourself these aspects of seasons within that you're allowing yourself this rest in order to be a better version of yourself in these times of spring and summer and growth and exuberance. So when you put yourself in a form of your own cycle in that way, I think it really
Mhm.
helps not only you, but others around you.
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely. And which leads me to my next question, because as you was talking, I was thinking about grief, right?
Mhm.
And you've had your own set of grief that you've had to heal from as well, which I think is, part of the process of being who you are today, and
Yes.
being able to connect with such an intimate way with individuals, right? And I love that because talking with you gave me another perspective of how to look at those things and go, wow, that is, I love that. I love the fact that we have individuals out there that's able to do that. I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
And so, can you walk us through the process of understanding the energy in grief, and how can we better, as people, be more open to the energy that is giving us instead of what is taken away from us?
Grief is one of the more complex energies because it is layered. Many
Mm,
energies are layered, but grief has so many incredible layers. And oftentimes, grief connects to guilt or shame or both,
mm,
and sometimes even fear. So in the work I do, that's very lower chakra based, and I'll be looking at that and kind of helping people heal those chakras and see what that is connected to, because there's often something even deeper connected to it. And
right.
there's always
Yeah.
a self aspect connected to it of where someone feels they could have done something or they failed in some way. So, grief, again, it has so many incredible layers to it. It is a very heavy emotion as well because, it is, I almost look at it like a vast ocean, right?
Yes.
And in
Yes.
some cases, you can be floating, and in other cases, you will feel like you are drowning. So,
Yes.
really navigating that is one, really allowing yourself to feel, letting out those emotions, the depth of it, and feeling safe to do so, because I think a
Mm,
lot of us don't feel safe to do that, especially after time, because when we're grieving, there's no timeline on grief, right? But
right.
people that have been there to hold space for you, you might start to notice they're not as wanting and willing to hold that space as they were in the beginning, right?
Very true.
And
Very.
so you can feel then guilty about your own grief and then have this own aspect of beating yourself up for still being sad, for still being emotional. That's yet another layer. So it's really, for me, I like to climb into those layers with people in a way that they feel comfortable and they feel safe to do so, because sometimes they're just not ready. And that's okay too, because again, that vast ocean, it can feel like you're drowning. And I'm not going to put someone in that kind of feeling. I want them to feel safe. I want them to feel that you don't have to rush the grieving process. Allow yourself to flow with it as best as you possibly can, because
Mhm.
you can't escape it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I would never say it gets better. And it's just something you learn how to live with. Your life changes and then you adapt to said changes. But
Yeah.
you don't one day like release everything like, oh, that's all better now, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh, yeah.
So
And
it's,
I'm right there with you, right? Like it's like we talked about before. I love everything about grief. I love the messiness of it. I love walking with individuals when they allow me to. I think it's such a privilege that a person invites me in,
yeah.
just to be there in those moments with them, right? And I love to see them go through the transformation
Yes.
of slowly becoming that other version of themselves in the new world that they now live in, but also learning how to pivot as their world begins to change, even over time. And you're absolutely right. Grief doesn't dissipate; it just changes,
Yes.
right? Every time something happens, if you lose someone, lose something, lose a pet, lose whatever it is, right? Your world changes. And but once I feel that once an individual can develop some basic tools they could begin to add on to it, right?
Yes.
As their world and as their body needs it, right?
Yes.
But is I think the most important part of it is listening to what your body is requiring of
Yes.
you, right? We naturally know how to grieve. We naturally know how to do it. And but I think over a period of time, through life experiences, certain situations, we sometimes forget. And so it takes individuals like yourself and so many other amazing people out there that are doing the work to go, hey, let's slow down a little bit. Let's take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And so now leads me to my next question. How in the work that you do, let's talk about how um the energy affects your body, right?
Mhm.
And how do we carry that?
Well, energy is in everything, right?
Mhm.
The world is energy. We are energy. So, as far as how it affects our body, it really is going to be a matter of the individual. So, for me, I will read someone's, seven main chakras. And, that's how I do an energy read. And I will climb into each chakra and see what it's willing to show me. And it will show a story. The body tells a story,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it will always, reveal itself in layers because we accumulate so much over time that energy is layered. So the outermost layer is going to be the thing that the body is calling the attention to. So
Mhm.
it just starts to reveal things. Like I'll see something like, like a wounded heart chakra. And then as I climb, that's a first layer. Okay. The heart chakra is asking for attention. So we're going to climb into this more. And then I climb in and I see how, if it's being guarded, if it's just looks like it's been attacked, some people have become very good at protecting their heart. So I'll see like a brick wall, or maybe I'll see like a cage where you could still see the heart, but it's locked. So they've learned how to protect it, but they're still allowing some vulnerability because you could still see it. Where the ones that have just, it's a cement and wall and I can't even see it, they've really built up. So
Yeah.
now, and that's the next energy layer. So now it's like, okay, what's behind this? And I'll probably hear something like dad. And so in a read, I'll just be like, okay, as I climb into your energy and I'm connecting to your chakras, I notice your heart chakra is asking for attention. And it is bringing me to the fact that you've become very good at guarding it. And the reason for this relates to your father. Could you tell me a bit about your relationship with him? And then the person's like, oh my gosh, yes, my father. And like they'll kind of go into that story. So, but then as they're talking, it then opens more. So you
Yeah.
could climb in even further because it's just this, okay, like, and I will never push into someone's energy. I had someone get really scared at how much I was able to get in their energy. And they're like, how much do you see? Your energy will only reveal what it's willing to, so the body will protect itself accordingly. I'm not going to get your deepest, darkest secret if your body doesn't want to allow it. So it's really then as we see that. And then what I like to do, I really like to give people active practices. So in that case, like I'll feel into what is something that this person can do to heal. So I might do some energy work with them to just work through some of the things just to help center their energy a bit, to help them feel a little more connected to themselves. Because
Mhm.
anytime there's a disconnect in the energy, there's going to be a disconnect with themselves. And that's when they're going to be feeling the emotions that align to that. They're going to be feeling upset. They're going to be feeling, uncomfortable in some way or stressed out or, just pick an emotion. There's always something in the energy body that's going to reveal what that emotion is, right? And what's going on. So it's helping to now shift the energy to align better to the emotional state you want to be in. And we're human. That's not always easy. We all want to be happy and feel like we're in this, euphoric sense, all the time. But planet Earth is not the planet for that. This is a hard school and we go through some hard things. But, as you mentioned earlier, when we learn how to, work with things and adjust and adapt, and that's what I like to do for people. So I'll give them some practices to do at home, kind of like homework of like, keep doing this, keep working with it. And that will vary by individual, because like say it's a meditation practice. If I feel that, I'll feel into the energy of the person. Like, okay, I feel they'll do an energy practice and then I'll feel like a block. I'm like, they'll only do that for about a week. Like, so then that to me is like, okay, that doesn't fully align to them. Let's bring in something else and see if this will connect to them. So I like to help them connect with what works best for their energy at the time.
Yeah. So, and I love that you said that. I love how you broke that down because I started thinking to myself, like, wow, like I've been doing it, with the work that I do with men. I've connected all of those different things. So, whenever these men are around, I can look at, but I look at and I listen to what they're saying. And I began to mentally unpack those things, right? So I know how to better support them
Yeah.
in a way to where, what I'm saying, they feel more comfortable to open up. And so, as being a man, it's like, okay, I have to understand. First, you have to understand the language
Yeah.
that we speak. And then from there, you have to read the personality and the character of the individual so you know how to be able to step into what they're going through and kind of like let them take you on a journey. Because
Yeah.
when we deal with trauma, especially childhood trauma, people sometimes um, they don't realize where they're taking you in those moments. So I tell everybody, I said, look, when you're sitting with this individual, pay attention, right? They may start talking about something that happened in their childhood at the age of 6, 13, 15, whatever it is, right? And you have to be a time traveler. You have to be able to go back there in that moment with them, with those individuals, but be able to bring the adult in there to say, hey, you're going to have to walk with this one.
Yeah.
You're going to have to, this one right here, been through some stuff, right? And they began to actually start to look at those things and go, man, I'm truly messed up, which I think in a lot of cases, knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe, right?
100%.
It's kind of funny how some of those old cartoons kind of teach you the life lessons that we use now, right? And so they begin to look at that, they begin to explore it. And I have seen some men back off of it because they're afraid of it. They're like, that was a really, really bad time in my life. I don't like living there, but
Yeah.
I'm okay right here. And so I'm also the type of person to go, no, you're not okay.
Yeah.
You're not okay. If you look at your actions that you're displaying in this present moment, you're not okay.
Hmm.
And the hardest thing is learning how to articulate those mixture of emotions, whether it be fear or depression, anxiety, overwhelmness, right? Because as a man, and again, when I say this, I'm speaking from my own personal experience. I never knew that there was so many mixtures of emotions that could be involved in this journey, right?
Yeah.
Because I was always used to a few of them, like I'm mad, I'm angry, you
Yeah.
know, fear, not so much. Being scared, yes. As an adult, I have to say that there was times in my life where I was afraid, but not the type of afraid that people would think. I was afraid of what people's intentions were towards me.
Mhm.
And so, and again, trauma response, right?
Yeah.
I have to protect myself because this person never said what they wanted with me. So I have a bad tendency now when people come into my life, I'm like, what do you want with me? Right?
Yeah.
Most people would listen to that and go, do you not feel that you're worthy? No, it's not that. I just like to be prepared what your intentions are. That's all,
Mhm.
you know. So I see I'm rambling on, but what are your thoughts on that though, right? Because breaking that down, I can observe my actions now. I developed a technique that I use now, right? Whenever I'm in a conversation with someone, so say for instance, right now, I can look at myself through your eyes to see what you see in me in this conversation, right? And go, oh,
Mhm.
okay, oh, all right, all right. But if I'm doing anything that may not be that may be out of characteristic, I can come back and correct myself and say, hey, no, 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 we got to get back on this, right? And so I self-reflect and self-correct.
Yeah. I think you bring up so many good points about how our trauma responses are always in a way with us, right?
Mhm.
So we have been conditioned, and it is very hard to not have some sort of trauma response as a human being, right?
Right.
So when we recognize them, like you said, like just knowing, having the knowledge, that's a huge first step in healing. Like having an awareness of, okay, this is why I act the way I do. This is why this happens. So when we start to recognize when our trauma responses come up, but we don't have the same reactions as we used to, right?
Mhm.
So, like,
Yeah.
for example, my trauma responses is fight or flight, right? Someone makes me feel challenged in some way, I am ready to fight them because I had to do that growing up. I had to, or I had to run away, right? So, those are my two main ones. So, it doesn't mean that those won't come up if I'm in some way feeling challenged. So for me, I notice it come up if ever I feel any sort of threat toward my children. Now, that I say threat, and it may not be a big threat. It could be like somebody yelling at them, but that in my body will be perceived as a threat. So I'm ready to fight that person, right? So in the past, I probably would have gotten in that person's face and, you know, gave them a piece of my mind to not ever do that to any of my children, right? The mama
Mhm.
bear is strong. So it doesn't mean the mama bear goes to sleep. Now that I've learned about my trauma responses, I've learned, and I've matured through them. So my first response isn't to go and like fight somebody, but my initial is that protective. So the trauma response is there. But it is up to me to have the mature response in the situation and not let the trauma lead me and guide me. It just now serves as a reminder of, okay, there's something about this is making you feel unsafe. Now let's work through this like a grown up and not
Mhm.
as that little girl that was terrified. So it's really recognizing that in ourselves, that we're always going to have those things come up in some way, but it is absolutely 100% going to come down to how we choose to respond to it.
Yes. Yes. And I'm glad that you brought that up because, as again, listening to you, you brought up a lot of great points. And I started thinking about the reactionary responses that people have, the deep emotional responses that people have that
Yes.
may trigger that flight or fight, right? You
Yes.
know, and again, when I say this, I'm speaking from my own personal experience. Like I've always realized that I never had a flight
Yeah.
sense, right? I've always had a fight.
Yeah.
I've always been in survival mode ever since I was a child. So
Mhm.
it was like, I can't run from this. Who am I going to run to? I'm going to run to me. So I might want to deal with this right now,
Yeah.
and and that's how I learned how to maneuver through the world. I was just telling someone yesterday. I said, it's when you can view the world in a three-layer chess game, right? You begin to learn how to maneuver on different levels,
Yeah.
but also anticipate not only the players on those different levels, but multiple. Like for me, whenever I enter into a place, Again, I'm looking at the world from a 3D, from a three-level chessboard, you know. And so on that chessboard, there can be 100 to 200 players against me. So I have to constantly be looking at and going, okay, if this person moves here, I'm gonna have to be able to move this. And it's constantly like that. That's the way my mind operates on a different level. But of course, this is the way that I view the world. But also, understanding the subconscious as well as the unconscious mind and how that energy actually translate in how I move, right? Um, so do you ever see the world in that way? Because when we talk about energy is forever, right? And it's so interesting the multitude of layers in that, and to be able to do the work that you do. Do you ever view the world in like this 360 energy ball?
In some ways, I do. I think it really will depend on the situation. I like how you brought up just about people and how they have their responses. So I feel like especially in those situations, I do that where I completely step back and I see it from this completely different perspective, and it does feel like this
Mm,
bird's eye view, right? Of this isn't somebody who is mad at me. This is someone that is having an emotional reaction because they have been challenged in some way. Oftentimes, you see this a lot on social media when people get so upset and they want to fight you and they don't even know you. It's because a truth of theirs has been challenged, right?
yeah,
So that's
yeah.
fine. I'm not trying to challenge your truth. That if that's what you believe, I am not trying to convince you otherwise. That's not my job. I'm here to just create some perspective from my own experiences. And if you don't agree, move on. Obviously, social media is a little bit of a wild world in that aspect of you have people that are completely like respectful and aligned, and even respectful if they're not aligned, and then people that are just ready to fight you and want to start yelling and whatnot. So that's where I completely have my, like I said, my bird's eye view, because I don't take it personally. um, it's not about me, it's about them and their situation. And I feel like that's such a good thing for us to be able to do in life. When someone is being triggered and they're lashing out, it is 100% about something in them and that what they've experienced. And, it doesn't mean that can't feel like a threat, but it also doesn't have to, if you recognize that it's a trauma response. And as long as they're
Mhm.
not physically coming at you, obviously, that's a different animal. Um, you can process it better. You can release it, not feel like you have to defend yourself, not feel like you have to protect yourself in every single situation, because that's again someone who just their truth has in some way been challenged and they feel threatened.
I love that you said that. You said something, and I totally agree with this. If you could put yourself in that situation and look outside of it, you realize that it's not personal, right? Life is not personal. It
Yeah.
really isn't. I mean, it can be personal to you. It can be your own personal journey, but the things that other people do have nothing to do with you. And I
Yep.
think that's where a lot of people actually get caught up in the emotional aspect from it, because I have seen people who have been working on themselves and have come a long ways, and it be that one person that come along and begin to just poke at that
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
inside of them, and for it, and they tend to forget it's not personal, and now they gotta go at each other. I've been looking at them going, did you do realize you didn't have to do that, right? There's like, no, man, you don't understand. This person was talking about this. It had nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we set ourselves apart from a lot of people who don't do the work that we do, because we realize that it's not personal. It has nothing to do with me. I'm only here to walk you to your next destination, but I want to leave you better than what I found you. And I think that's where that energy begins to shift
Yeah.
in a lot of people, because people respond to our energy as well, right?
Yes.
When we enter into a space, people can read our energy, and that energy changes up a little bit. They tend to follow that energy, and
Yes.
sometimes they don't know when their energy is starting to mesh around with it, and it becomes like this challenging negative thing. And
Hmm.
now that's when the response reactive turns into a more emotional reaction, and that's where the
Exactly.
messiness starts. But again,
Yes.
those are my thoughts on that, though. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's true. I love to create perspective for people
Mhm.
because, it is really hard for us if someone like literally is coming at you and saying, "I hate you, you're terrible." You're probably gonna feel wounded by that. So the perspective I like to create is, let's just say someone's looking at you and they say, "Ah, I really hate your purple hair. What a horrible color." And you can look at yourself and you're like, my hair's not purple, right? So it's easy to detach from that because
Mhm.
you're not connecting to it yourself. You're like, I know my hair's not purple. I don't know what they're seeing, but that's on them, right? So
Mhm.
we're able to just not take it in. But if they start saying things that we are taking in, it's because there's part of us inside that believes it to be true. And that is a wound. And that is
Mhm.
something that is telling you, hey, I'm ready to heal. Let's look at this. Let's unpack this.
Right.
So
Right.
until you could respond more neutrally, like the purple hair situation, unless of course you have purple hair, but that's a little different. Same thing though, if you have purple hair and someone's criticizing it, and it doesn't bother you, it's because you yourself are okay with this. You know that it's not about you, it's about them and whatever wound they have, right? And so, yes, it's kind of like a light version because it could really, really hurt when someone is saying horrible things to you about you. The smear campaigns, especially like the
Mhm.
world of narcissism, they love the smear campaign and to make
Oh
somebody
yeah.
look like the horrible one in the situation. And I find in those situations, and I think more people are becoming wise to this. When you look at a situation, the person that is often quiet is usually the person that I listen to and I am more likely to believe than the person who needs to tell everybody who will listen all the horrible things that have happened to them. Now, this isn't a clear cut aspect in every situation because a lot of times when we've been in these situations, we are so desperate to be believed because we've been gaslit, we've been lied to. So we are trying to tell people and to seek them out. So I do want to put that out that just because you're sharing your story doesn't mean it's not true. But it also means you have wounds that are asking to be healed, that need to be addressed so that you don't feel like you need everybody to believe you and therefore save you because you've just been in a situation where you've had all your power stripped from you. So it's really learning about taking that power back.
Mm. I love that because I've seen that happen so many times. I have a lot of females that are my friends and everything, and I watch them and the relationships that they get out of and the relationships that they get into and things like that. And I have to look at them sometimes like at some point you're going to have to make a decision not to keep making the same decisions over and over with because what you're doing is that you're choosing the same person just in a different body,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they go, well, I was like, no, no, I'm not saying it to be mean or anything like that. I'm just bringing something to put it in front of you because what you're doing is that you're repeating the habit
Yes.
of looking for something, but you're not willing to look outside of what you're familiar with, which is
Yes.
causing you to go and want to be a victim in these
Mhm.
situations because you know just as well as I do. Most people will go, "Oh, I can't believe he was just like the last person," or and men do it too.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it. I've done it myself. Like, it's just like the last one I was with, right? But how many times can you say that without going? Maybe it's not them. Maybe it's me. As cliche as that may sound, maybe it is me, right? But which also leads me into my next question. I find this part fascinating as well because the guiding the guiding point that you're on, is such an interesting thing. And there was something that happened to me about a couple of years ago when I was, when I really started digging into my relationship with grief,
Mhm.
and so I want to talk about the shadow people. right? You ever experience that? Like be sitting around and all of a sudden you see a shadow walk past you, but then you turn around, there's nothing there, but you know that there's something there, right? Because it sounds crazy, but it's, you know,
Yeah, I mean, we're on planet Earth. It's the planet of duality where there's good, there's bad, and so there are certainly a lot of entities out there. There's a lot of different species out there. So, yeah, I think, especially nowadays, people are becoming more aware, more sensitive, and if nothing, at least more open to it.
yeah. You think that has to do with the level of empathy that a person carries as well?
I think it could. I really feel empathy is one of it. Openness is a big part of it, and really that could just be having an open heart, right? Not needing to challenge everything that comes your way of trying to disprove things, but yeah, like an openness to all possibilities, really.
Yes. And um I always associated with it with grief, right? Because grief is such a connective way. It's such a connected human experience that we sometimes bypass that, right? It's such an individual experience, but it's such a universal thing. And I find it beautiful that this is the one thing that will never change in the world that
It's
we
true.
all have in common, right? We're going to grieve the way that we need to. We're going to go through the things that we need to, the way that we need to. And although it's such a connected experience, the way that we do it is so personable, right?
Yeah.
Because what works for me may not work for the next person, and what worked for you may not work for the next person. But also, the way that we've combined it and made it ours,
Yeah.
right? In a way to where we can look at almost anyone and go, I see that. Let me just go and do this with you. And I think that's what makes your gift so powerful, right? How it's able to pivot and match with other people
Yeah.
in a sense.
Well, I think too,
What's your
grief
thoughts on that?
creates strong depth, right? We have
Yeah,
for a long time, we're in a capitalistic society, so that can be very superficial in nature to look at, superficial things in life. But grief, there's nothing superficial about grief. So
right,
even the most superficial person, once they encounter grief, it it brings them to the depths of everything in them, right? So,
right,
people always say like a lot of those processes, it makes them really look at life differently. It alters perspective on so many levels, and you get past so much of the superficiality in life, and it's grief can be extremely grounding and probably the worst possible way, but it really creates this aspect of understanding, and no one truly understands grief like someone else who has gone through it and especially has climbed out of the depths of it, because
right,
that is usually why, I mean, statistically, even like people that become therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, they've been through it, right? They have had really struggled, and they then want to turn around and help people, which could be said for so many counselors. It's just, but really what it's doing is you're shedding away the superficial layers and you're getting to the more human elements.
hmm I love that as well. And I think that's what attracts me to it so much, right? Because I will look at grief and go, "Oh, come here, come
Yeah.
here." I'm like, here comes that proverbial hug. Come here, come.
Yeah.
Let's talk. Let's sit down. Let's
Yeah.
conversate. Let's see what else we can do out here in the world. But of course, when we process, well, I can't say we, when those of us that are in this field of grief and trauma, mental health, energy, and transference and things like that, we often view these things in a more positive light, right? Because
Yeah.
we have had to climb out of these dark places. We have had to not only walk the walk, but we had to talk the talk. Like you
Yeah.
said, we got to bump your head a couple times. Here I am, 6'4", and I felt like I was in a house made for short people. Every time I turned around, I was banging my head on the cupboard. Like what in the world, But it took me a while of sitting back down and having to rub my head a little bit and go, that's the reason why I ain't got no hair now. Right. Because it all it all came out. I left a couple of them on the covers and stuff like that. It was like, okay, I had to rub myself a little bit. Like next thing you know, my hair was just like, you don't want me, I'm gone, I'm out. So here I am now. Here I am now. And so, and again, I love it so much that I make this is how I view it. And I think it's fun,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, go ahead, please.
No, I'm really just supporting everything you're saying. Like I love where you're going with this. It's just we're able to embrace it, and we're able
Yeah,
to not let it not let it drown us, because we've learned the process, at least our own individual process. But by doing that, it allows us to help others, and it allows us to lift them up. It allows us to help them see things in a different light. And if nothing else, it allows them to feel supported at a time when they are probably feeling incredibly alone.
man, I love that. I love that. Which gives me my next question. In your journey, how many times have you had to pivot within your gift?
Oh, I love that question. Well, my gift, I felt I recognize more in hindsight, right? So
Mhm.
when I started opening up to spirit, and I felt like that was brand new to me. But then I started to be shown memories of times of my past, of look
Mm.
what you did here and look what you did there. And I was like, oh, okay, okay. So, because I remember hearing, like, stories of people that have been doing this since they were children. I was like, that wasn't me, but apparently it was. And I started seeing these memories again and feeling these feelings again. But as I've now been really connected to it, I think it is continually evolving. I find there are things I do more each year, probably each day, even not realizing until I see it in hindsight again, of like, oh, wow, look at, I could do this now, or I didn't realize I could do that. So I feel
Yeah.
it's going to forever evolve for me. I think too, I've been able to be so grateful and humble in this, and that has been a big point of why I'm able to keep evolving and growing, because when our ego
Mhm.
gets in the way, it will block us. It will.
So, oh yeah.
So so I think that that's been a really great thing. Like, I just keep connecting to that gratefulness. Like, thank you for allowing me to do this. Thank you for allowing me to help others. Thank you for allowing the messages to come through, and really looking at myself as a tool, not a healer, in the sense like I'm healing you, I'm helping you heal. I think it's a very
Right.
big difference. Like, I am, yes, I would call myself a healer in the sense of like I help people heal, but I'm not like giving them this magic pill and like that's it and I've done it. It's not about me. It's about what I've helped open them up to, what I've helped to show them.
Right.
And there's an expansion to that for all of us.
Yeah, and I definitely understand that because my the gift that we carry. I often tell people, I'm obligated to it. I'm obligated to give it to you. So whatever
Yeah.
you need from me, I'm willing to give. You don't have to take anything from me. Like you don't understand. You've been attracted to me because of this thing. So,
Yes.
and along the way of me walking you to your next destination, my job, my commitment to you is to give you everything that you need that I'm carrying because it's not mine. And when
Yes.
you realize the multitude of people that your gift belongs to, it becomes something different, right? I really wish I had the words for it, but I can't really explain it. But it's like, oh, I need to give this to you, right? This is not mine. This is yours, right?
Yeah.
And that changes with people, depending on what their needs are. And so what I've had to do is that understanding conversations and um how people approach me in certain situations, right? And that allows me to say, okay, I have to put up this boundary right here in order for me to be more effective in this lane over here, right?
Yeah.
And so it allows me to connect with those individuals on a more personable level. And it, and it's, for me, it's, I understand, I get it. A lot of people may not understand it, but I get it. And so, I, as you said, it's not personal, right? It's not personal. I want to see you better when we have to part ways and you have to go on your journey, because I realize that too as well, right? And the reason why I do realize that, because I do watch people get upset when someone has to go somewhere, right? I
Mhm.
have to leave. People are upset about that. I go, why are you being upset? They go, well, I thought we was friends, or I really cared about this person. It's not like you're not going to see him again.
Mhm.
They're going on another part of their journey, right?
Yeah.
Wish them well,
Yeah.
right? You've already shared what you needed to share with them, and look at how you left them. Now, what I don't like it when people leave people battered and beaten and bruised and things
Yeah.
like that.
That's different.
I don't like that aspect, but I think it's one of those things. Sometimes people don't know what they're doing, and things like that. So,
Yeah.
what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel, we're brought into situations for a reason and we're meant to learn. And it is about how we choose to learn, right? We're always going to be presented with experiences in life. It's really going to come down to how we choose to respond, how we choose to act in regards to these experiences. I really feel that as a soul, we're learning. We will forever be learning and evolving. But
Mhm.
no matter what happens, our responses to every experience is going to be the deciding factor on how things continue for you. So, this doesn't mean you're not going to be hurt and you're not going to have things that are difficult. But you notice as you start to have better responses to these situations, your life kind of starts to change in this subtle manner at first. But then you notice that less of that is attracting to you. And you're recognizing that life is feeling a bit easier and things aren't maybe as heavy as they need to be because I'm having a different reaction to the same experience that always presented itself before. I really believe when we have these patterns that come up, or the same kind of person, but in a different suit comes into our lives, right? It is a lesson and it is life presenting us with an opportunity to behave differently this time because how we behaved before is why this lesson is coming up again, that there's something about it we can probably shift and alter. So, looking at that, and sometimes I don't like it. I try to laugh at it though, like, oh, here's this kind of person again. Okay, universe, let's go. Because I have awareness now. Whereas in
Yes,
the past,
yes.
I would have been like, oh, this type of person. Oh, but I try not to go there now.
And
So,
it's really hard. It's really hard, right? Repetitive patterns. I've been there so many times where I'm with you. I laugh now. I go,
yeah,
yeah, no, I'm not
yeah,
about to do that.
yeah,
Like you thought you was going to get me on this one, right? But
yes.
I see what's going on, right? So
Yeah,
I'm very situationally aware, emotionally aware of things, because if I can pick up on your energy, if it's like a familiar thing, I can begin to lay out different scenarios, and depending on how that person steps is how I maneuver. So it's
yeah.
like, it's just one of those things. Did you freeze up
It
on me?
No, did
Okay.
I?
Okay, you
Am
still
I
there.
good?
Um,
Oh, yeah.
so now, with that being, no, no, you back again. It's this weather out here. Colorado's going through a snowstorm right now, and
Mm,
so it's doing whatever it needs to do
all the
out
funky
here.
stuff.
So it's amazing, and then you're dealing with the fires out where you are. So
Yeah.
it's a combination of all of these different
It's
things.
all chaos.
So all chaos, but it's a yin and yang, right?
It
You can't
is.
have one without the other.
No.
So
Yeah.
it eventually will balance itself out. When it does, we don't know, right? So I want to get your thoughts before we begin to wrap this up. In the world that we live in today, what do you think is needed to help the individuals that are going to be going through the grieving process and that are going through the grieving process right now of the loss of everything that they've experienced all across the world?
Compassion.
Mm,
I think compassion is key. You know, I
compassion
feel
is key.
that
Yeah.
compassion is something universally we could better understand. I believe a lot of people would say love, right? But if you really think of love, many of us have very interpretations of love based on what's been shown to
Mm,
us. So love can
yeah.
be very different in everyone's own mind and definition. Compassion, I feel, is more universal. When you have compassion, when you can be compassionate, you are truly raising your vibration and the vibration of others. And I believe that the more we could connect to compassion for not only ourselves, but especially to other people, the more we lift the collective. Did
Okay.
we freeze?
Okay. You froze up a little bit there,
Oh,
but I
sorry.
kind of put some of the pieces. No, no, you're fine. Like I said, it has a lot to do with what's going on
Yeah.
with the weather and everything else. So it's is to be expected,
Yeah.
right?
We'll
So
just roll with
now,
it.
as we be, yeah, just a little bit, right? Just a little bit. And as we begin to wrap this up, I want to ask, how can people find you?
I'm best found on my website, which is my name, chriswasco.com. And I am on social media.
Yeah.
I'm on Facebook at Chris Wasco Medium, and I do have a YouTube channel, Energy Healing with Chris, where I'm building that one more. But I like
Now,
to
how
give
can people?
people,
Okay,
I like to help people with like meditations and
yeah,
that kind
most
of stuff.
definitely.
So, yeah,
Yeah, most definitely. I have your information. So anybody wanting to get in contact with Chris, her YouTube channel is in the description below. Please go there and show support. Subscribe and tell her Tony sent you. And find her on Facebook. Guys, follow her. She's freaking amazing. If you enjoyed this conversation, she has a lot more to offer. We didn't even scratch the tip of the iceberg on this. But and we could talk forever. But due to the
I
weather and
agree.
everything, I don't want it to cut out in mid conversation and things like that. You guys will see a lot more of her as well. And again, go check her out. Now, before I let you go, Chris, I got one last question. I love to ask people this: if you had a superpower, what would it be?
Healing. I feel the ability to heal others, especially. So I've actually had my kids even ask me this question. And I was like, I've connected to my superpower. I help others heal. It just doesn't look like how I thought it would look.
I love that. And see, your kids already prepped you for the
They
answer.
did. They did. Mommy, if you could have any superpower, what would it be? Because a lot of people think of things like flying or, don't get me wrong. I
Yeah,
think teleporting is awesome, so that stuff like that would be really neat. But just the ability to heal I think, is extremely powerful.
yeah. So, one of the things I've done is I've asked myself that question on a weekly basis, right? Beginning of the week. I go, if I had a superpower this week, what would it be? The first time I was asked this question, I was like, empathy, right?
Oh,
And
that's
then I realized that the second week, it totally changed on me, right? Not only, well, it added to it. Not only was it empathy the first week, but empathy was there the second week. And I was going, if I had a superpower this week, what would it be? And I thought to myself, like, understanding, which is still part
yeah.
of empathy, just more in a more broader sense. I
Yeah.
want deeper understanding of individuals so I can be better at serving, right? And so, I tell people this all the time. If you ask yourself that on a weekly basis, you will find that you can add to what you're already doing.
I
And
love
when you
that.
have a month of these questions being answered, put it together and see what you come up with, right?
Yeah.
It's so I find it fascinating because just like everything that we do is constantly changing, evolving. Things are being getting rid of, things are being added to it, and things like that. And I find it, I'm here for the journey. I'm here for the ride,
Yeah.
so I'm always looking forward to what's coming next after that. Now, with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. For everybody who's been tuning in, I see you guys out there. Thank you guys for the heart and everything. And if you haven't already, head over to the YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And again, Chris's info is down in the YouTube channel. Go over there and check it out. Go to her website, follow her on social media, show her support on the YouTube channel, learn some new tools, but also be able to ask her some questions as well, man. You guys are going to be very impressed with her. And again, Chris, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for your wisdom and your guidance. I had a blast speaking with you. Hopefully we can do this again.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing. I appreciate you, Tony.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much. For everyone else, this is going to conclude this episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. And we're going to see you guys in the next one. If you're out driving and it's cold, please stay warm. If it's snowing where you are, please stay safe. All right. And we're going to catch you guys in the next one. Peace.